Good morning and welcome to the HRart Rise Morning Show at our new time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, but 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and Central, you're somewhere in between. But I'm so grateful if you're tuning in live. I'm grateful if you're tuning in to the replay, and really grateful that you're here for this one because today, Friday, kind of concludes launch week of us formally introducing the HRart Center. So Leadership Arts Associates is what we were formerly, and now we're fully embracing being the HRart Center, and I'm really pumped about that. And so all week digitally, it's been a digital launch. So all week during on social media, whatever channel that you follow us on, we have been sharing about what that means. And it also, because it would make sense, has inspired what we're going to be talking about today in our heart chat. And kind of this traces of it in the entire show. So I have to say that I am feeling really good today after having a pretty, I don't want to say tough week, but or even heavy week, but I was definitely processing and purging. And I think that was probably going to throw a qigong term at you, but I definitely was purging this week, going through, writing out some emotions and releasing some things. And today I feel just so much lighter and so much clearer. But yeah, and it's if you're into your inner work that you do, I'm sure this is not a foreign concept to you, but you kind of ride this roller coaster as emotions and processing and growing and evolving. And so, every day that I wake up that I can be present, every day that I can be more aware, every day that I can be more clear, I am so, so grateful. I also recognize that that journey is full of that winding path that we've been talking about a lot in our past episodes. But yeah. So one of the things that I just want to say before we get started here with our post to ponder is, when I look at the HRart Rise Morning Show and what I want to offer moving forward as I'm planning for future episodes, is I really want to talk about things that you are wondering and questions that you have. And so I'm going to highly encourage you to join our community, the HR Intuitive, at hrintuitive.com. It's down below. It's 100% free. And I want you to join the community and share with me what you would like to hear about. I mean, I'm creating this resource and talking with all of you. Yes, it also serves as a place for me to kind of vlog and do my reflection and talk about some really cool stuff. But moving forward, I really want to make sure that I'm hitting the topics that resonate with all of you and the reasons that you are tuning in and watching. All right, so let's jump right into Post to Ponder. Our Post to Ponder this week are going to be a little bit different. So for the last few episodes, all of them have pretty much been from Instagram. And for whatever reason, there was nothing that was really speaking to me on Instagram. And we've also kind of come to the place where I got caught up on all the posts that I wanted to share. So I'm really functioning and pulling from real time now for Post to Ponder. That's also why we've kind of cut back, and there's only 3 that I share instead of the 5 as I was trying to clear out rapidly. And so since it wasn't vibing with me, I hopped over to LinkedIn. It's really interesting as I was scrolling through my LinkedIn feed because, originally I thought that I was not pulling LinkedIn posts because they were, because I was hanging out on Instagram, and that's just kind of where I've been. However, now that I went back into LinkedIn, I realized that despite how large my network is, and I don't know if this is an algorithm thing or whatever, but there's just not a lot of posts that I'm pondering as I'm scrolling through that feed. A lot of it is HR colleagues sharing positions, which is highly valuable. So connecting from that aspect. And a lot of personal story sharing, which is really, really cool about things that people have seen that inspire them. A lot of comics. It was really strange going through my feed, and I kind of had to dig to find 3 But that was also a really beautiful kind of experience because I'm really happy with the 3 posts that I ended up with. And it's going to give a little bit of a different flair today. But they are all from LinkedIn. So without further ado, let's dive into these posts for Posts to Ponder for April 23rd, 2021. So the first post, this is not going to come as a surprise, but I follow Johnny C. Taylor Jr., who is the president, CEO, whatever the formal title is, of SHRM. And I have been a big fan of Johnny since he took over and love the things that he shares. Highly recommend following him. He just launched, LinkedIn has this new feature where they're doing newsletters. So he just launched his own newsletter, and this was pulled from his first one because once again I would follow his feed for the posts, and now all these posts are kind of translating into this newsletter. So this was the top graphic in the newsletter that said, "We have an opportunity to make an empathy impact that will be felt in homes and communities around the world." Thinking about the word empathy, I mean, it's interesting to me how it is becoming a buzzword right now for all of us in the business world. And I'm very excited about that. And so anytime I see the word empathy, it truly catches my attention. So here are some stats that he shares, which this is what really made me ponder. So according to the 2020 State of Workplace Empathy Study by Business Solver, among members of Generation Z, this is the newest workforce. Everyone's always asking about the newest workforce. So here's some stats directly from them on an empathy study. 83% would choose an employer with a strong culture of empathy over an employer offering a slightly higher salary. So now empathy being seen as this critical component of culture. 79% would choose an empathic employer even if it meant changing their role, industry, or career path. 83% would consider leaving their current organization for a similar role at a more empathic or empathetic organization. In other words, people care about empathy. Your organization should too. What is so fascinating to me about these statistics, these are not like 20%, 30%, 60%. We're like 80% all the way, like 80 to 85% in these statistics. So out of the newest workforce that's coming out, they are craving empathy. And, we've done some shows in the past talking about empathy and being an empath and all of that really vibing for HR practitioners. But to me, this post really resonated with me and affirmed what we're going to talk about today, which is what moved me to be bold, because I'm not somebody who wants to be bold. But it is posts like this from Johnny that lets me know that I'm on the right path and that I'm not living in some weird bubble completely disconnected from the world. We cannot argue with these statistics. This is the future. And what does that mean for us as practitioners? All right, post number 2. Post by Judy Lee. She's sharing her Wall Street Journal article that highlights her story. The beginning 2 quotes really hit me. Dare to take up space. Bring your whole self to work. Many of us have heard these words from motivational speakers or leaders at work, and I thought I was doing my part because I've never thought of myself as quiet. I mean, I work in marketing. It's my job to be vocal and to tell stories. I unknowingly erased the most important part of my identity for much of my life because I wanted to assimilate and be accepted. To not be noticed as being a perpetual foreigner in the country where I've spent the majority of my life. To not hear the dreaded words, "Where are you from?" It's taken me 2 decades to feel comfortable doing this in a professional environment. And to my fellow Asian Americans, I encourage you all to dare to take up space. So Judy's first 2 lines resonated with me. As I read the rest of the post, this spoke to me in a whole new way. I have always considered myself to be part Asian American. I'm half Filipino, and what is going on in the world very much has been breaking my heart. I've been grieving with the families of what is happening to the Asian community and the hate that is there. This is my family and my loved ones. And one of the things that I think really started doing the HRart Rise Morning Show, bringing back this idea of having a place to reflect and to process as the podcast kind of morphed the way that it did. I was doing a lot of personal identity work and still am because of some of the current events that happened in 2020. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But they ignited something in me that made me really have to start to think about and reflect on who I am and how I want to show up in the world. And so I say all that to say that this spoke to me on so many different levels. And the article is beautiful. Judy, this post is beautiful. And it is when people are bold and have the courage enough to post something like this that you don't realize the ripples that you're sending out. So just going to put that out there. And we're going to move to post number 3. Mr. Simon Sinek has been pretty instrumental for me in 2021 with his book, The Infinite Game. And then his posts that are so simplistic provide just this glimmer of hope throughout all of my my feed. So this post says from Simon, success can be dangerous. It has a tendency to shut our eyes to opportunity and cover our ears to the ideas of others. You know, last night, my husband and I were having this conversation about success and what that definition of success is for me. And my husband's always very good at making sure, he wants to make sure that I fully understand that I am successful, that I have been successful. And he gets concerned as to whatever that definition is that I have for success. And I'll be honest, I mean, that post from Simon made me really realize that I don't know if I have a definition for success for the reasons that he stated. You know, if I can articulate a place where I've made it, that I've accomplished this hefty goal, I think that puts me in a place where I can easily or potentially lose being connected. And I think I need that humility. So as much as it is a struggle or a challenge to keep going when you feel like the journey's never going to end, I feel like it's absolutely necessary for the work that I'm going to do and the work that I'm called to do. So don't know if that makes any sense, but that's how I'm feeling. And that's how I was pondering when I read that post. All right, so let's talk about our heart chat. Let's see what we're going to talk about today in our heart chat. So our heart chat, today's episode is about being bold. And today, when I began my professional career, my aim was to blend in, a reasonable goal for a true introvert at heart, which I am. I'm truly introverted. However, this year I found myself in an unstoppable push to be bold. The force nudging me forward is one that I have been unable to deny. In fact, I believe this force has been here for decades in my lifetime, building in the background. And this quote I have heard over and over and over since 2021 has started, but what we resist indeed does persist. And I think that I have for a couple decades tried to resist this force that was building, and I was not sure what it was and what its intentions or ultimate end goal was going to happen to be. But I tried to resist it, and it persisted. I think it actually ultimately made it stronger, but it's brought me to where I am today, where I'm making a pretty big, bold move, at least in my world, of launching the HRart Center, of owning it. We've taken baby steps with the brand. I still remember, it was probably 4 years ago, I was working with a coach who totally told me that this heart concept was nonsense. And that if I chose to do what I'm doing now, I would basically kill my entire career. And that has stuck with me, and I think just sits there on my shoulder as we've been going through the motions of this week. And I'm really appreciative to all of you who have reached out, who have said congratulations, who have shared, who have liked. It's sometimes I think you don't realize when you hit the like button or the heart button, especially in today's times when we can't be together live like how we would be if I was formally launching this in a pre-pandemic world. It is very meaningful to me. So thank you to all of you who have done that, who have been here, who have been supportive all throughout this week, but all throughout the build up to this, who have been supportive of the HRart brand. You have been part of that force, that unstoppable force that I have not been able to stop, that has resulted in this being the only path forward. And so for this heart chat, what I really want to talk about today is what it's like to be bold, especially as someone who lives in a very introverted body. And so when I choose to go bold, it almost feels like this eruption, an outer body experience. It almost has to be this massive buildup to make me want to do something of this nature and want to be seen and to put it out there, especially in regards to personal opinions and thoughts and ideas that are very vulnerable in nature. And kudos to my writing coach, Demi, who helped me really find my voice, because that has trickled over across my entire career, whether it's the podcast, whether it's here. There's just so much clarity. Like if you want to go into the archives of the Heart of It podcast, or go into the archives of when this show started, and it was Work Love Wednesday. And I've uploaded all of those to YouTube. We started on Facebook, and then we moved to YouTube during quarantine, just because I really like all the tools that are on YouTube. But if you go back and watch, you can see the clarity in my voice just morph and transform. It's fascinating for me to watch. And I'm actually kind of grateful for the way that we create content in this entrepreneurial world, because I can physically have evidence and see the growth. So there you go. So I'm going to share with you 3 points that I think are very important pieces of my story about being bold. So, when you think about being bold and thinking about stepping forward and having courage and confidence, when we're doing it in regards to meaningful work, I think these 3 components are going to be present in some sort of variable kind of way. Not exactly like mine. So I don't want you to think that these things have to be happening, or you're not doing a move or a step forward that is meaningful. I think that there just has to be a level of humility attached to the boldness. I think sometimes we move to being bold and wanting to be part of a change, which is really important. But if it's not linked to through humility, through vulnerability, we have a chance to have ego, which is trying to protect us. And if we're going to go bold, it's going to essentially fluff our ego so that we basically position ourselves in a place where we're right and everyone else is wrong. I have to dance with that even with these three variables present, that I want to say that I'm right and you're wrong. And it really isn't about that. This whole bold movement of the HRart Center is about awareness and clarity and helping. And I really will tell you about that at the end. But let's talk about these 3 points. So the first point is, where did I start? So this journey for me, when I really began to be open to the fact that this bold factor is starting to build, I had just left my corporate position because I was completely disengaged from my work. Even though I knew that I was good at it, but I just wasn't, my heart was not in it anymore. And I also, to be completely honest, felt very worthless and thought I really had nothing really to offer in the world. I was pretty much in a very dark place. I had just had my second daughter and thought that it was postpartum. I really made excuses for myself that everything was hormone related. But when I look back, I mean, it was really accumulation of me just being really unhappy with my life and my circumstances. And I think a big portion of this is because I was resisting these nudges that have been coming at me probably since I was 10 or 12. And, I'm reading with the book club, the book A New Earth by HRart Tolle, and in it, he talks about for people to awaken, often they have to have a tragic or really sad, painful life experience, or you just have to get to a dark place where you just know you cannot live like this anymore. And that is what really was the start of my entrepreneurial journey. So even though it looked like I was starting a business and people were excited, I was terrified. I was lonely. I was pretty much bracing myself for failure and to use the launch of the business as the stamp to confirm that I really had nothing to contribute to the world. And then was planning on how I was going to basically stew in my misery for the rest of my life. So I was in really not a great space. I mean, I had moments that were highlights, but I was just not. And, becoming an entrepreneur made that even magnified more because I didn't have an employer to blame. I only had myself. And so I was basically by myself every day in an office. I only had myself to blame if I didn't like the work that I was doing. It was just a very dark and lonely place. But it is that place that became the starting for the build of having the courage to make a bold move. So that's when I finally started to listen and pay attention. And the initial pieces of that journey was to turn inward and to do some healing, which I am still massively doing. So that started 6 years ago now, and I'm still healing myself. Like I just said this week, I just spent a week purging and releasing and undoing all of the things that I did to myself to resist basically what we just did this week. But everything is intentional and divinely designed because I needed all of that experience to be able to do the work that I'm doing. So it's part of that winding path. I don't believe that I made a mistake or I wish that it had been different. Those experiences that I had were intentional by design so that I could be where I am today. All right, number 2, I was open. So because of where I was, I basically had myself in a state where I did not trust myself to make decisions. So I remember taking a business planning class and we're supposed to build a business plan. I didn't want to make any of those decisions. I didn't want to talk about pricing. I didn't want to talk about a model. I didn't want to talk about forecasting. I didn't trust myself to decide if I needed to hire somebody, if I needed to, have support. I remember even when I was looking for my office space, I didn't trust myself to pick an office space. And as a result, I just ended up being completely open, that I would basically say yes to any opportunity and trust that it was meant to be here. And so that image with the woman blowing, I went where the wind took me, where the wind blew me. Wherever the wind took me, that's what I did. My business was a scattered plethora of a variety of services that I could do, because if you called and asked for something, I said yes, whether I would like it or not like it. If it was in my wheelhouse and something I was capable of doing, or something that I was capable of organizing or finding someone to do, I did it. And that is number 2. So number 1, rock bottom, that led to me being really open. And then that brings me to number 3, is that entire journey brought me clarity. So I think that when I think about the path that led me to choose to relaunch my business, but to define it for the very first time, to focus on a specialty niche, which was a long time coming. Like, we could look through the evolution and see traces of it, that this was always what Leadership Arts Associates was meant to be, that it was always meant to be the HRart Center. I just had no clarity to be able to articulate that back then, 6 years ago. Leadership Arts Associates was where I was at that moment. And, but it took me being at that moment to be open to then experience and do the work that I needed to do to gain the clarity. And we've talked about this in the past couple of episodes, because the clarity that I have, this is not just knowing what you want or knowing where you should go in the future. This clarity is so strong and so clear that you cannot argue with it. And it's not about being right. It's about just knowing that this is the space that you're meant to be in. And I know that's a really kind of a weird thing to say, because it really isn't about, I found my way, and so either do my way or the highway. But it's almost like I've gotten crystal clear on what I have to offer the world and how I want to show up. And I'm here to basically be of service. And that's really, at the end of the day, what it is. And those that hopefully I'm meant to serve and am able to help, I'm here and I'm ready. And I'm sorry. If there is one thing that I'm sorry for, I'm sorry that it took me 6 years to be there, because I wish that I had known so that I could have helped, which I think I did help. But, as someone who really wants to be of service and to help, I wish I could have helped with the clarity that I have now then. But that's only a regret, because we're just starting, and I'm really excited for the future and what we're going to do and the people that we're going to help. So, talking about these points from a very vague kind of standpoint, but I also did it because I wanted to show you kind of what indirectly led me to launching. And if you haven't seen in social media, the HRart Center is a restorative and growth center, growth community for HR practitioners. And I am fully embracing that I want to take care of HR practitioners so that they are empowered to do the work that we need done in the workplaces. So my clarity is so clear that I was able to put it down into 5 commitments that I wanted to dedicate my work to for this community. So the 5 community commitments are that we are an advocate for the HR benefit in business, believing that it must be present. So never did I ever think that I would say I'm an advocate for something with such passion that I do here, but I am an advocate that HR, I think, is a non-negotiable. It needs to be in business. It has to be present, and it needs to be embraced. We believe engagement is a vital cultural component that must be alive and well in all employees, but it begins with HR. I think engagement is this really fully loaded word, but it's one that we have come to know and use on a regular basis, so I use it here. But to have someone that is engaged, I feel like that is someone who is working in an inclusive environment where they're able to bring their whole being, their whole essence of who they are and show up at their best. And when they can do that, that's when we have these amazing cultures. But for that to occur, we have to make sure that HR is able to show up at that engaged level, being engaged at that capacity that I just mentioned first. If HR can't, then the culture can't. We believe the leadership and cultivation of people is an art form. This is a medium that must be mastered individually. Looking at leadership theories, looking at managing, yes, there are some techniques. When and how you use them are based off of the individual. So I think until we can learn how to connect with people individually and master that art form, and also know how to use these tools as an individual, so how they come alive for you, because not all of us can do the same things. Not all of us talk or present ourselves the same way. Not all of us have the same personalities. We have to figure that out and master that for ourselves to be truly effective. And it is an art form. That has been true since day one, because I knew that. That's why we were called Leadership Arts Associates. That's also why art is still in the name, because it is an art form. We believe in evolving the narrative to create a connected vision, one that embraces a partnership with people. I was just talking the other day about, HR mindset going into a space, in a corporate environment, going into a meeting and not feeling like they're understood. They're basically outnumbered. And I really, truly envision a day where you go in and HR is just as equally represented as operations at that table. It's not one seat. It is a beautiful blend of equal representation between the people who do the work and honoring that, and the work that needs to be done and the process to accomplish it. And then last but not least, we believe in strengthening and developing intuitive and healing skill sets in the workplace. So I think that we have mastered a lot of compliance and limiting risk as HR practitioners. One of the things that I think is missing is the permission to allow our intuitive skill sets to flourish, but also this healing component. And I think just because the current state that the work environment is in, we have to engage in a healing aspect. And I don't think that employee assistance programs are going to be enough to combat what is happening in the workplace. And so we have to step up. So these are the 5 commitments that I am committing my work to and committing the HRart Center to bring to life and hopefully manifest. And then we put this in this nice little blurb, so our why is that we create clarity so that HR practitioners are empowered. I want to create clarity for people, help them find the clarity that I have so clearly. There's a right HR practitioner for every working environment. It's not one type of practitioner fits all organizations. And so I really think that we need to invest in that individual and empower them and allow them to see clearly the HR vision for your organization in the only way that they can. And last but not least, why the HRart Center? What's really at the core of this? This is the biggest belief ever. I believe that the healing and growth of people matter. And I believe this is something that 110% needs to be embraced by organizations. We've heard about wellness for probably close to a decade now. We've seen an emphasis on it. And that emphasis has come as a result of us knowing that an employee that is well is more productive. And we've tied it to numbers. It's now just to talk about the fact that people matter. That is a theme that we've seen consistently rising up in 2020 and continuing now into 2021. And I hope it does continue. We need to embrace the fact that people matter in the workplace. And because they matter, that is enough. And moving beyond, how does the factor of when people matter and it translating to a dollar figure to make that matter to the organization? It should just be because it's the right thing to do. It's a human thing to do. So that is a glimpse of the clarity that I've gained. I am beyond excited for what lies ahead as we embrace these community commitments, as we begin working with HR practitioners and the ones that I've already begun to work with, as we begin sharing the tools and the services that we have been working hard to equip and get ready for this community. I'm so excited, and I just can't wait to serve and continue to serve. All right. So those were my points. That was what I wanted to share with you. As I kind of mentioned last week, we shifted away from the affirmations, and I said I wanted to make sure that we just close every time together with a pause for a permission to connect. Just taking a moment and giving you a minute so that at least you have a minute a week to do so. So with that, I'm going to put up my pause post, which I don't think I have. There we go. And if you just want to get situated in your seat, feet flat on the ground, hands on your knees, palms up, and begin focusing on your breath, pulling the breath in through the nose to fill the belly, feeling it expand. Exhaling out through the nose, feeling the belly empty and contract back in. Attempting with each breath to get it a little deeper and a little longer as you go more within, checking in for a few moments of being connected. Taking in every sensation. allowing the breath to return back to normal. And give yourself some time and space to come back to the room that you're in while you're waking up the body. And have a beautiful week. I'll see you next Friday for the HRart Rise Morning Show. Thank you so much for joining me.